Yeah, they're not. We're not even sure.
Oh, I will be Oh, okay. Yeah. One more minute, Don. Be patient. You make me nervous. Good evening, Atherton.
Good evening.
Did I surprise some of you? So, Atherton, welcome to tonight's program. This is the Town Hall. My name is Hilda Sang, and I'm a resident here at Atherton. So thank you so much for joining us here. People who are tuning in on whatever apps or the closed circuit TV, look at all these people in the flesh.
No.
Welcome tonight. We have a number, just a small number of birthdays to celebrate this week. We are celebrating birthdays for Connie Shi, John Poole, Bonnie Fong, Ruth Edwards, could you be quiet back there, please? Rosemary Hampton, Clara McAdams, Ruth Weissman, Janice Deal, Neil Fry, Suk Lee, David Schofield, Jeffrey Trost, Shirley Simmons, and our own Linda Barrett. So, shall we sing happy birthday to them all? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, God bless you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. We are also celebrating this week an anniversary for Lou Nooner and Lillian Yap. They've been married for 4 years. Happy anniversary. So tonight, we are delighted to have J.C. Munns join us. He's one of our most popular performers, again, here at Town Hall, in the flesh. Now, Jay has been entertaining audiences for over 5 decades, specializing in vintage American popular music. He has performed for 2 U.S. presidents and countless celebrities, including Bob Hope, Cary Grant, Jimmy Stewart, and Milton Berle, to name a few. His entertaining program of music, stories, and anecdotes lovingly showcases the great song hits and songwriters in the golden age of American music from the 1900s through the 1940s. So please give a warm welcome to J.C. Munns.
Oh, thank you so much. It is such a joy to be with you and be back at Atherton. I've played here over the years and it feels just like home. And it's wonderful to be able to see your smiling faces. Actually, I can't see your smiling faces. But I assume you're smiling underneath those masks. Anyway, the theme of my program tonight came to me when I realized that the year 2020, last year, was the 100th anniversary of the dawn of what we call the Roaring Twenties. Now, there's some very interesting parallels between that time and our own. For one thing, the Roaring Twenties started out with an economic downturn due to a massive pandemic. In that case, it was the Spanish flu of 1918. But once that crisis passed, the economy in the country roared back to life, which is one reason we call that decade the Roaring Twenties. So we hope and pray for history will repeat itself and we'll see a rebound in this country when the COVID crisis is over. Now, the Roaring Twenties was a decade of great optimism and excitement. There was a decade of exciting new fashions, and there were innovations in art and literature. It was the era of Art Deco. But most of all, I love the wonderful popular music that came out during that decade. And I was surprised when I looked through the songs that came out during those 10 years to see so many of them are songs that we remember and love today, despite the passage of a century. And part of that is because many of them were revived again in the 1930s, the 1940s, the 1950s, and even later. And I discovered some songs that I thought were written while I was in high school that actually came out during the Roaring Twenties. There's so many wonderful songs in that decade that I can't begin to share all of them with you in the time allotted, but I'm going to pick one or two from each year, beginning with 1920 and ending in 1929. Now, we'll start with 1920. And this song that I'm going to play for you was featured by a man who billed himself as the world's greatest entertainer. Now, not too many people younger than us would remember Al Jolson. But Al Jolson was a huge star in the early part of the 1900s, through the teens and into the 20s. And he was responsible for the first sound picture in 1929. And his theme song was the song I'm going to play for you next, which came out in 1920. Everything seems lovely when you start to roam. The birds are singing the day that you stay, but wait until you are further away. Things won't seem so lovely when you're on your own. Here's what you'll be saying when you're far from home. Mary, sun shines east, sun shines west. I know where the sun shines best. My heartstrings are playing around again. I'm coming. Sorry that I made you wait. I'm coming. Hope and trust I'm not too late. Oh, I walked a million miles for one of your smiles, my Well, I don't know if anybody's seen any of the motion pictures that Al Jolson made, or the Al Jolson story, which Larry Parks portrayed Al Jolson very effectively. And if you've ever seen Al Jolson perform the song, you'll recognize that at a point in the song, he puts out his arms like this and goes out on one knee. Now, the story behind that is that when he performed this on Broadway, in the Broadway show, the first time he was on stage with it, he had just bought a new pair of tuck shoes, and they were killing his feet. So when he got to a point in the song, he couldn't stand it any longer. So he went down on one knee and put his hands out like this. Well, the audience reaction was absolutely electric. And he was so pleased with that, that from then on, at that point in the song, he always went down on one knee and put out his arms like this. He did that so many years that he developed calluses on one knee. And if you ever go to Inglewood Park Cemetery, which you can actually almost see from the 405 freeway, Al Jolson has a huge memorial on the gravesite there, and a full-size statue of him with his arms out like this, down on one knee. Well, now going to 1922, one of the songs that Al Jolson made famous, when the showers may come your way, then when the shower flowers and then May. So if it's raining, have no regrets, because it isn't rain, it's raining violets. And when you see clouds upon the hill, you see crowds of daffodils. So keep looking for a bluebird and for his song whenever April shines along. Anybody remember that one? Oh, yes. Well, how about this one? Okay, I should tell you the story behind this, and that is that Rudolph Valentino, the great silent movie star, was hitting his prime in 1921 with Son of the Sheik and all these movies where he played an Arabian prince. And so anyway, the success of that of him in that role led to the song "The Sheik of Arabian." My heart belongs to me at night when you're asleep. Into the earth I'll creep. The moon that shines above will light my way to love. The moonless land with me. I'm the Sheik of Arabian. Well, now another song that came out in 1921 that I think would resonate with young people today, because a lot of people have been going through hard times during this pandemic. But hopefully, there's been some bright spots in those lives, and it's kind of reflected in this wonderful song that came out in 1921. Every morning, every evening, hey, we got fun. Not much money, oh, but honey, hey, we got fun. The rent's unpaid too, we haven't a bus, but times were made to for people like us. In the winter, in the summer, hey, we got fun. Times are bum and getting bummer, still we have fun. There's nothing sure, the rich get rich and the poor get poor. In the meantime, in between time, hey, we got fun. Thank you. Okay, well, you know, we often think of the 1920s as being an era where all the songs were razzmatazz, Charleston, and all that. And there are a lot of songs written during the 1920s that were kind of like that, including Al Jolson and Eddie Cantor made that song famous. And I would have sung the rest of it, but I realized I started in the key way too high for my voice. Anybody from Chicago? Okay, well, 1922 saw this song. in 1922, there was a kind of a fad going around in the 1920s for songs about the South. And there were just lots of songs. Al Jolson sang Rockabye Your Baby with a Dixie melody, and literally 100 of songs came out during that time regarding the South, most of whom were written by New York songwriters that had probably never been further south than Harlem. But anyway, one of these is a song I want to share with you next. But it's got an interesting story because Walter Donaldson was a composer, and he was a composer of wonderful songs during the 1920s and even the teens. There's a long list of his songs. And then Gus Kahn, probably one of the most prolific songwriters of the 1920s, was his partner. So the story goes there in Walter Donaldson's apartment, and he has his son was next door in the room, and in that room he had a toy trumpet, and because it was a toy trumpet, it only played 2 notes, as it happens. It was so Walter Donaldson and Gus Kahn are trying to come up with a song that they can sell, and it's very distracting with this little fellow next door doing this. So anyway, Gus jumped up and said, "Walt, I'm going to go and ask him to stop playing the trumpet." And just before he did, Walter Donaldson said, "No, wait a minute." And then he nothing could be finer than to be in Carolina in the fall morning. Nothing could be sweeter than my sweetie when I meet her in the morning. When those morning glories wind around your door, whispering pretty stories I want to hear once more. Strolling with my girlie where the dew is curly early in the morning. Butterflies will flutter up and kiss each little buttercup at dawn. If I had a lantern lamp for only a day, I'd make a wish and here's what it say. Nothing could be finer than to be in the morning. Boy, I really miss the fact that I can't ask you to sing along. I am hearing my own voice and thinking, why does it sound so bad? And I realize it's because I'm used to having all of you sing and I can sort of hide behind you. Anyway, I know that maybe next time we're together, I can invite you to sing along. In the meantime, I guess you could always hum along to the tunes here. Okay, well that was 1922. Now we move on to 1923. And again, like many of the songs in the 1920s, there were some really up-tempo tunes like, yes, we have no bananas, we have no bananas today. And then there was another song that came out that was very popular. Now this one's probably not one that anybody remembers today, but the interesting story is the songwriter that wrote this song had been studying popular music that were, the ones that became hits, and he came up with the very interesting conclusion that songs that had the double O vowel, ooh, ooh, seemed to have a better chance of success. So he decided he would write a song that would use the double O vowel extensively. Now, he picked his subject for the song, a popular cartoon strip at the time, Barney Google. Now, I don't know if anybody remembers Barney Google now. He's been gone for a long time. But anyway, it was hugely popular, one of the most popular syndicated cartoons in the 1920s. So he wrote a song which has plenty of double O vowels. Barney Google with his googly eyes. Barney Google had a wife 3 times his size. She sweet Barney 44. Now he's living with his horse. Barney Google with his googly eyes. Now, I have no idea whether double O vowel was the reason, but the song was a huge hit during 1923. Now, there's another song that came out in 1923 that would probably be more familiar. And it started out actually in the it was later featured in the 1946 Marx Brothers film. But the reason that I remember it, and maybe the reason you would remember it, is that Connie Francis had a huge hit in 1958. Who's sorry now? Who's sorry now? Whose heart is breaking from each vow? Who's sad and blue? Who's crying too? Just like I cried over you. Right to the end, just like a friend. I tried to warn you somehow. You had your way, now you must pay. I'm glad that you're sorry now. Isn't that a great torch song? Doesn't that say it all? 1923, who's sorry now? Okay, well now we're to 1924. And one of the great songs from 1924 is Well, now, if I were to ask you what the California state song is, probably most people wouldn't be able to sing it. It's a lovely song. It's got a beautiful melody, but it's just not performed anymore. And the song, the official California state song is "I Love You, California." Anybody know it? Just no. Not surprising, but many people might say, isn't the California state song one that Al Jolson introduced in 1924, which goes, California, here I come, right back where I started from. Bunny birdies sing everything is sun, kiss this and don't be late. That's why I can hardly wait. Open up those Golden Gate. California, here I come. That should be the official state song. Well, 1924 also introduced a song that is my favorite song. Now, people have asked me over the years, do you have a favorite song? And I know literally thousands and thousands of songs. However, I have no trouble or hesitation in answering, yes, I do have a favorite song. And it's the song I'm going to play for you next. I've played it for hundreds, probably thousands of times, and never get tired of it. Now, you probably would be surprised to know the song was written in 1924 because it was a huge hit in the 1940s and 1950s. But the fact of the matter is that it was written back in 1924, and there's an interesting story behind the song. Isham Jones, that's a name not too many people remember, but Isham Jones actually wasn't born into a musical family. He was born into a family of coal miners. His father and grandfather were coal miners. In fact, the town he lived in was called Colton, Ohio. And naturally, it was expected that Isham Jones would enter the family profession. And he did for a while. He worked in the mines. But his heart was not in mining. It was in music. And he used to smuggle a violin sometimes down into the mine so he could play at off moments. And on one occasion, he was thinking of some song. He had some tune running through his head. and he wasn't paying attention to work, and his job was to lead the mules that took the ore cart down to where the miners were working. Well, he wasn't paying attention to where he was going, and he ended up leading the mules and the ore cart all down a blind alley to a dead end. At that point, Isham Jones's employer suggested to him that he may wish to seek a new line of employment. So he did. He went to work as a full-time musician. He ended up forming his own band. His band became more and more popular until he reached a point where he had the top band in the top hotel in the city of Chicago, kind of the pinnacle of his profession as a musician. Well, at this point, his wife decided maybe now that they were successful, it was time to get rid of the beat-up old upright piano they'd had for their whole married life. And she arranged for a local music company as a surprise to deliver a brand new baby grand piano into their apartment while they were at dinner. So Isham Jones came back with his wife after dinner, opened the apartment door, looked in the room, and there was a brand new baby grand piano. He ran to sat at the piano and ran his fingers over the keys and fell in love with the action and the tone of the piano. And so taken with his birthday piano was he that he stayed up all night and played it. Now, in the course of that night, he ended up writing some songs. One that he wrote was "The One I Love Belongs to Somebody Else." Does anybody know that one? Anybody? How about "I'll See You in My Dreams"? Well, the third song he wrote in that night was "It Had to Be You." And of all the songs he wrote, that was probably the one that became the most famous. It was featured in over 42 motion pictures when sound came in, and it was revived again in the 30s and in the 40s. I remember hearing it on the radio in the 50s when I was growing up, but not so long ago I had the television on. I wasn't really even watching what was playing. Just had it on in the background like you do sometimes, and I heard "It Had to Be You." So I looked to see what was playing on the screen, and it was a commercial. And I'm not making this up, it was a commercial for underarm deodorant. Well, to me, that's the sign of a true classic. Anyway. It had to be. It had to be. I wandered around, finally found somebody who could make me be true, could make me feel blue, and even be glad just to be sad, thinking of you. Some others I see might never be mean, might never be cross, try to be boss, but they wouldn't do. For nobody else made me a thrill with all your faults. I understood it had to be you, wonderful you. It had to be you. Well, you know, another reason why I miss having you all sing along with me is you notice how many times I've forgotten the words and I've blanked out. I'm always counting on you to remember where I forget. Anyway, I'm doing the best I can. So 1925 comes along, and again we have the wonderful songs. I for two, I for two. Oh, what those fat feet can do. Has anybody seen my gal? So one of those. Has anybody seen my gal? Now if you run into a 5'2" covered with fur, diamond rings and all those things, you can bet your life it isn't her. Coochie-coo. Has anybody seen my gal? And of course that also song, If You Knew Susie, like I know Susie, oh, what a girl. Another Eddie Cantor favorite. And yes, sir, that's my baby. No, sir, don't mean baby. I play these for you, but I'm only to 1925 and the time is getting away. Anyway, the song that I really want to play for you that came out that year was written by the greatest songwriter, American songwriter of all times, and that is Irving Berlin, in my opinion. Anyway, Irving Berlin wrote this next song as a wedding present for his wife, Ellen. Now, to give you a little background, Ellen was not Irving Berlin's first wife. He'd actually married a decade earlier to a lovely young lady who was also in show business. However, they went on their honeymoon to Havana, Cuba. And in the course of their honeymoon, she developed some kind of an illness. I think it was a form of malaria. Anyway, she only lingered for a few months and passed away. And Irving Berlin was heartbroken. It was another 10 years before he would ever consider remarriage. And but he fell in love with Ellen. And but things were not so easy because Ellen was the daughter of one of the richest, most powerful businessmen in the United States. And he did not consider songwriter to be a suitable occupation for a future son-in-law. And so strong were his feelings on the subject that he hired private detectives to follow Irving Berlin and investigate his life, trying to find something that he could use to convince Ellen that he was not a suitable match. Well, Irving Berlin led a fairly blameless life, so that didn't work. And when that didn't work, he basically said to Ellen, if you marry against my wishes, as far as I'm concerned, you're no longer a member of the family, and you'll be cut off without a cent. Well, true love prevailed. Irving Berlin and Ellen eloped to Europe, but before he did so, he presented his bride-to-be with this lovely wedding present. Now, he didn't just hand her the sheet music. He actually went to his attorneys and had them put the copyright in her name as her sole property. Well, the song was an enormous success, and it made her very wealthy in her own right. But I'm happy to say that the families ended up reconciling. And you might ask, well, what changed Papa's opinion on that? And the answer is very simple. The birth of the first grandchild has that effect sometimes. So the song I'm going to play for you now, you may not recognize in the beginning because I'm going to play the verse. So many of these songs have beautiful verses we never hear, especially this one. But anyway, you'll recognize it when I get to the chorus. Such a beautiful song, and I wish you could join and sing with me. It's oftentimes, I've had so many people come and tell me that the song is played at their wedding. It's a perfect wedding song. I'll be loving you always. Words are just so sweet. Well, I should have sang it. I'll be loving you always with a love that's true. When the things we plan need a helping hand, I will understand always, always. Things may not be fair, always. That's when I'll be there, always. No precious thing, no. Okay, we're gonna go now to 1926. And, again, it was the 1920s. It was the era of catchy little tunes like, pack up all my cares and woe, here I go, swinging low. Where somebody waits for me, sugar sweet, so sweet. Blackbird. No one here can love or understand me. Oh, what heart-like stories they all had. The light, all day, late tonight, blackbird. But there were a lot of beautiful ballads that were written in the 1920s. I haven't been able to play all of them for you today, but I certainly couldn't go without playing this one from 1926. Well, 1920s, the era of razzmatazz. Ain't she sweet? So you're walking down the street. Well, I ask you very confidentially, ain't she sweet? Ain't she nice? Look her over once or twice. Well, I ask you very confidentially, ain't she nice? She's cast an eye in her direction. Oh me, oh my. Perfection. I repeat, don't you think she's kind of neat? Well, I ask you very confidentially, ain't she sweet? Also in 1927, this beautiful, one of my favorites. When Whipper was cold and evening is nigh, I hurry to buy you. Turn to the right and take a white light. I take you to buy you. You know, a smiling face, a fireplace, a cozy room. In your nest, a blessing where just mommy and me, and baby makes three. Happy and we're happy and Well, 1927 also produced this song. This one is really a huge, huge favorite of mine. Many of you know my background a little bit. You know that the reason I got into this music was that my grandmother had been a dance musician in the 1920s. And when we moved to California in 53, I guess it was. I was 5 years old, but I could play a little bit by ear even then. And so when she discovered that, she got out her ukulele and began teaching me her repertoire of songs from the 1920s. Now, I assumed that she was teaching me the popular hits of the day, but actually they were songs that were old by the time the 1950s rolled around. But Nana loved those old songs, and I grew to love them as well. And one of them was a particular favorite. Now I have to tell you that I have, well, not to get into too much detail, but 12 years ago when my wife and I each turned 60, we suddenly, for reasons too complicated to explain, became the legal guardians of 6 grandchildren who were at the time ages 11 to 8 days old. So we started over as parents at age 60. Now there's a reason why people shouldn't have children in their 60s. They say, well, it keeps you young. And I say, no, not really. It just keeps you so distracted you don't feel your aches and pains. And right now at this point, I have 5, well, 2, one of them is now grown and now married, and I have a great grandson, but I still have 5, and right now they're all teenagers at one time. Now there's no way a 72-year-old man should be raising 5 teenagers, and 4 of them are girls. Anyway. But the upside of it is that I have my own little captive audience. And so over the last decade or so, I've introduced them to all these songs, and they love them. And they love singing along with me, and I can't do it so much now that they're teenagers, but when they were younger, we would have, every night we'd get together and we'd sing these songs, and we always close with Meet Me Tonight in Dreamland from 1910. Anyway, now I can't pry their cell phones out of their hands, but this is a song that they love and I love from 1927. Oh, we got a barrel of money, maybe we're ragging and funny, but we're traveling along, singing a song, side by side. Oh, we don't know what's coming tomorrow, maybe it's trouble and sorrow, but we're sharing our load, side by side. Through all kinds of weather, what if the sky should fall? Just as long as we're together, it doesn't matter at all. And when they've all had their troubles and parted, we'll be the same as we started, just a traveling along, singing a song, side by side. Thank you. Well, now there's a song in 27 that I'm very fond of, and because I've specialized in this music and I've worked with lots of musicians over the years, one of them who was a major influence in my life was a gentleman by the name of Ray Hoback, who was born in 1900, and I ended up working with him a great deal during the last decade of his life, and he made it his mission to dump every song that he could think of into my head, and I was totally thrilled to have him as my mentor. And I learned a lot about Ray's life. That's all he ever did in music. He was on the orchestra staff at Fox Studios, so he shows up in motion pictures all the time. I'm always astonished when I'm watching an old movie, and there he is in the background, either in the orchestra or something. He's playing an instrument of some kind. Anyway, Ray told me that when he was traveling with the bands, that I guess out of boredom, the members of the band would make up alternate titles for some of the songs. Most of them are not fit for mixed company. However, this one is one that he called Gorilla My Dreams, which of course we know better under the correct title of Gorilla My Dreams. I love you, honest I do. You are so sweet. Just hold your charms again in my arms, then life would be complete. Since you've been gone, dear, life don't seem the same. Please come back again. And after all said and done, there's only one girl of my dreams. It's you. Well, I just think that is the sweetest song for one to sing to their beloved. Now, 1928 comes along, and here is the mirror image of that song, popularized by Eddie Cantor. Another bride, another June, another sunny honeymoon, another reason, another season for making whoopee. A lot of shoes, a lot of price. The girl is nervous, he answers twice. It's really killing that he's so willing for making whoopee. Picture a little love nest down where the roses bloom. Picture that same love nest. See what a year can bring. He's washing dishes and baby clothes. He's so ambitious, he even sews. So don't forget, folks, that's what you get, folks, for making whoopee. Well, this is another song that came out in 1928. You would never believe it, because we always think of it as a World War II song. Again, the nice up-tempo version is button up your overcoat when the wind is free. Take care of yourself, you belong to me. Well, my favorite part of the words actually go further down the verse, which when you sass the traffic cop, use diplomacy. Take care of yourself, you belong to me. Well, Jimmy McHugh was one of our great songwriters, and he had a songwriting partner whose name just escaped me. Very famous, having a senior moment here. But anyway.
Yeah. Right place.
Now, if I had a granddaughter, I would say, Google that for me real quick. Anyway, she wrote the lyrics to this, and the two of them were out actually taking a little break from their songwriting chores, and it was December, around the time that people are out Christmas shopping, and they were going down the streets of New York, and they happened to notice a young couple staring in the window of a jewelry store, and by the look on their faces, they could tell that none of them were in a position to afford any of the items they were looking at in the window, and that was certainly brought home when the gentleman turned to his wife or girlfriend and said, "Gee, honey, I'd love to get you one of these sparklers, but I can't give you anything but love." Well, That's all it took for them to go back to their apartment, and about 40 minutes later they had this song. I didn't give you anything but love, baby, it's the only thing I've got. Baby, you'll walk, ski a while, someday you'll find. Yes, and I guess all those things you've always cried for, gee, I'd like to see you looking swell. Baby, diamond bracelets, Woolworths doesn't sell. Baby, till that lucky day you know darn well. Baby, I can't give you anything but love. Well, my grandchildren said to me, Grandpa, what is Woolworths? I was really shocked by that. I couldn't believe they'd never heard of Woolworths. But then I realized that the last Woolworths, which was one of my favorite places to shop, disappeared some years before any of them came along. So I said, never mind, we'll just change the word to Walmart. No, it isn't. Okay, we're now at 1929. Now we've gotten through a lot. Again, beautiful ballads written during those years, not just the razzmatazz, such as this one. In this beautiful waltz. This is another beautiful ballad that same year. Well, not to say that there wasn't any razzmatazz in 1929. How about now, any of you have seen Young Frankenstein? That movie's probably ruined that song for you. Interesting thing about that song is it was revived, I think in the 1970s or 80s by a singer by the name of Taco. I don't think he had any other hit, but he did this song kind of as an upbeat sort of a rock tune, and it hit the top 40. And Irving Berlin, who was still living at the time, well into his 90s, became the eldest songwriter to ever have a song in the top 40. Well, also during 1929, thought that song came out in the 1950s, when they had with the movie. Well, the interesting story is that Arthur Freed wrote that song and a bunch of other wonderful songs. And Arthur Freed ended up selling his musical catalog to MGM. And MGM, I guess, paid quite a bit of money for it. And so they figured, well, we got to get our money's worth out of this. So they hired a team of writers and they said, write a musical and use all these songs in the musical. So Singing in the Rain, You Were Meant for Me, all these songs that you heard in the musical were actually written much earlier by Arthur Freed, that used very effectively in the movie. And of course, everybody that's seen the movie can't forget Gene Kelly doing that amazing dance, to Singing in the Rain. Well, they literally had to tear up the floor of the soundstage where it was filmed so that they could create puddles for him to splash through as he's dancing and singing. And I've also heard that the rain just didn't photograph that well. So they decided to actually use milk when filming that sequence. So he was actually singing in the milk. Well, quickly in 1929, misbehaving, saving my love for you. I know for certain, love, I'm through with certain that you that I'm thinking of. A misbehaving, saving my love for you. Well, in 1929, September to be exact, the good times sort of came crashing down with the stock market crash in 1929, which ushered in what we now call the Great Depression. Well, in 2020, we all also suffered sort of a crash with the COVID-19 virus, and for me, the hardest part has been not being able to entertain audiences and play for dancing. And I really feel sorry for young dating couples who are just starting out their courtship when COVID broke out. So I was inspired to write new lyrics to an old 1920s song called Hard-Hearted Hannah, the Vamp from Savannah. Now, if any of you remember the song, it describes the lyric of a vamp who has a heart of stone, even icemen leave her alone. She was even seen at the seashore with a great big pan. She was pouring water on a drowning man. Well, I added new lyrics to that song, which I call Hard-Hearted COVID. Hard-hearted COVID, mean-hearted COVID, you're killing sweet romance. When couples go out because of the danger, they both wear masks like the old Lone Ranger. They shut down our dances, you're killing romances, because dating's not the same. You'll never get a goodnight kiss from your sweet guy, because he has to stand 6 feet away and wave goodbye. So hard-hearted COVID, just leave us and go it away. Well, 2020 was a hard year. Many of us have lost dear friends and loved ones. People have lost jobs. Companies and restaurants have gone out of business. The economic impact seems somewhat reminiscent of 1929. However, just as the nation came roaring back to life in the 1920s, I'm confident it will do it the same in the 2020s. And so I'd like to close with this very hopeful song from 1929. Happy days are here again. The skies above are clear again. Let us sing a song of cheer again. Happy days are here again. Together, shout it now. There's no one here can doubt it now. So let's tell the world about it now. Happy days are here again. Your cares and troubles are gone. There'll be no more from now on. Happy days are here again. The skies above are full of cheer again. Happy days are here again. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you, Jay, for that musical time travel. What a fun hour we had. Thank you again. So this ends this evening tonight. I'd like to thank our technical crew. There's Craig there, and Sean, Gary, and Ron. Thank you very much and have a good rest of your evening. Good night.